have Diane Tet.
Yeah.
If one said, if I did not come within 12 months, write and give my get to my wife, and they wrote a get within 12 months and gave it after 12 months, it is not a get. If he said, write a get and give it to my wife if I did not come within 12 months, and they wrote it within 12 months, they gave it after 12 months, it is not a get. Rabbi Yossi says in such case it is a get. If they wrote it after 12 months and gave it after 12 months and he died, if he preceded his death, if the get preceded his death, it is a get. If his death preceded the get, it is not a get. If he is not known, this is the case, which they said, which is she is divorced and not divorced. If one throws a get to his wife and she is inside her house or inside her courtyard, she is divorced. If he throws it to her inside his house or inside his courtyard, even though if it is with her in a bed, she is not divorced. If he threw it into her lap or onto a basket, she is divorced. If he said to her, take this note of indebtedness, or if he found it behind him and she read it and behold, it was her get, it is not a get until he will say to her, this is your get. If he placed it in her hand when she was sleeping, and she woke up and read it, and behold, it was her get. It, excuse me, it is not a get until he will say to her, this is your get. If she was standing in public property and he threw it to her, if it is close to her, she is divorced. If close to him, she is not divorced. And half, she is divorced and not divorced. Okay.
Okay, so we just saw this with the Gerushin, and the same thing is true with the Kiddushin. Says the Mishna Gimel, "Chen inyan Kiddushin," that if he throws the kesef Kiddushin, he throws the ring at her, and it lands closer to her inside, in other words, closer to her inside her area that she can protect it, then it's hers, and she's married. And again, this is something that Chazal instituted for the woman's benefit, that because Me'ikar Adin, she has to receive it in her hand.
Mhm.
But if it also lands in the area around her, this is also for her benefit if she wants to receive it, and therefore she is considered married already. Um, okay, v'chein le'inyan hachov, and also in when it comes to repayment of a debt, but only under the following circumstances. Amar lo bal hachovo zrok li chovi. Only if the creditor says, toss the money to me. Because for a chov, this is something that Chazal didn't make any special provision for and say that oh, you can repay by throwing the money back at the creditor. He has to consent to it. He has to say, oh yes, throw me the money. Zrak li chovi uzrak lo karov lemalve zacha halove. Okay, so if it's closer to the malware, then in other words, it's in his zone of control. Then it's his. Korov lelove, if it was closer to, if it he was throwing paper money and it blew back at him. Love chayav, he still has to repay. He hasn't made the payment. Now, what happens if it's a mechza al mechza? When it was with the woman, we treat it as a safek, and since we're saying that in this case when the malveh says, "Okay, throw me the money," I'll treat it as if it's like he's implicitly saying, "Treat me like all the halachas of kiddushin and gerushin." Okay, so if it's a mechza al mechza, it's a safek if he's paid or not. So if it's a safek, shneihem yachloku, then they have to do a 50-50 over here and say, okay, so the lover only has to pay back half of the amount now. If the money, let's say the money got lost in the middle, right?
Right.
He threw the repayment and a dog ran through, grabbed it, and ran away. Haisomedes al rosh hagag. Now, what happens if a woman was standing on the roof of the house? Uzrakula, and the husband threw the get at her from the ground. Now she's in her. This must be that she's in her property.
Right.
Okay, because we're going to see that her property is going to acquire for her. If it's his property, it's not going to acquire, right? So let's say he throws the parchment up, and kevan shehigia avir hagag. Now, once it reaches the airspace of the roof, now not just the airspace, but within 3 tvachim of the surface of the roof. Now that's called lavud. Once it's within 3 tvachim, that has been acquired for her. Hare zoma gereshes. So now, if something extremely unlikely occurs, and some sniper archer with a flaming arrow shoots and hits the get as it comes through and takes it away and burns it up, okay, it's still hers. She's still divorced. Okay.
I
Who
want
me?
to try that.
Huh?
I want to try that with a creditor. Can I just throw the money at him? See-
Throw the money and see if you. Yeah.
that won't work.
Okay. Who milamala he milamata. Okay, so he's on the roof and she's in her courtyard. Zrakula, and he throws it down to her. Kevan sheyat samir rishus hagag. As soon as it leaves the gag, um, and it's now floating down towards her. Since it's going to land in the chatzer, and it's in a guarded area, this then it's a kosher get already. Nimchak or nisraf harez or megaresha. She is already divorced, and if somebody shoots that flaming arrow and intercepts it on its way down, it's okay. All right. Daled. Beis Shammai omrim poter adam is ishto beget yashan ubeis Hillel osrin. So, get yashan. We're going to define a get yashan in just a minute, and we're going to see this is one of the kulas of Beis Shammai and one of the chumras of Beis Hillel that Beis Shammai are cool with a get yashan, and Beis Hillel say no, it's not good. Ezehu get yashan. What is this? So he wrote out the get, and then having written out the get, he didn't hand it to her yet, but he went into yichud with her. Okay, so what's Beis Hillel's concern? Why don't they want to allow this to be a get? They don't. Um, this is because if he has relations with her and she conceives a child, and then as time elapses and then he decides he's going to hand over the get, then it's going to be obvious that the child that she's having was conceived before the day after the date on the
Yeah.
get, because the date on the get is the date on the get. Okay, so now this is going to be a mark of shame for the child that he was born out of wedlock when really he wasn't. So Beis Hillel say that this is not good. He needs to get another. He needs to give her another get. Okay. This, however, just between the lines, is only true if the husband is available to give her another get. But if he's gone overseas and now we're not going to find a way of giving her a get, then and she's going to be an aguna. If not, then even Beis Hillel will concede that okay, the diavad we'll recognize this get. So why is Beis Shammai not concerned about this situation? Well, that's because of another halacha that's going to come across later. Is that Beis Shammai also hold that a man is not allowed to divorce his wife unless she's committed adultery. There's got to be a substantial reason why he's divorcing her. Okay, you can't just say, "Oh, we had an argument and now I'm divorcing her." No, this is Beis Shammai say the reason why you're given a divorce is because there's matzah b'pad davar erevas. There's a reason why he can't stay married to her, and once he can't stay married to her, Beis Shammai aren't worried that he's going to have relations with her because she's had an affair. Why is he going to be sleeping with her now? So this is where the chumrah becomes a kula. I say, okay, so once we know that divorce can only be given for these reasons, therefore we'll be makil on the get yashan.
If in the case where she had a child, if they had relations with her, she had a child, and he still wanted to divorce her, he's a momzer then?
No, there's no mom. No, definitely no mamzer. Mamzer is from two people who are not allowed to be married,
Okay.
who are asur mishum erva. So like a brother and a sister create a mamzer, or a man with an ashes ish who's married to somebody else. So say you have an extramarital affair. That's called a mamzer.
Okay. All right.
Okay, but not just simply born out of wedlock. That's not a mamzer. Yeah. Kasev l'shum malchus she'ena hogenes. Now, the the get was written out of respect to whatever the ruling authority was. It was written with the dating of whatever Malchus you were living in. So if you were living under Greece, then you would write in whatever year of the king of Greece. Okay, so that's the date on the Kasuba. Now, so um, that's the interesting different interpretations. I read in the art scroll that Malchus she'ena hogenes. If the this is written in the name of the uncultured nation, which means Rome.
Right.
Although Kahati says l'shem malchus she'ena re'uya lakach, klamar l'shem malchus she'en la shilton b'osa Medina. Basically, well, actually Kahati is actually agreeing with what I saw in the article because it's the point being that it's that you're in one country and you're writing the date on the get according to the date in the other country. Okay. Um, Malchus Yavan, or he dated according to the kingdom of Greece, um, which is which is which is no longer extant. Even at the time of the Mishnah, the kingdom of Greece no longer existed. Okay, Lubinian Abayis, or he wrote about put the date on according to the Beis Hamikdash when the Beis Hamikdash was built, and the Beis Hamikdash is no longer around, or the Churban Abayis even. The get's going to be puzzle also because it was not written, the date was not written according to the Takanas Chachamim, as we said, that it's got to be written according to whatever the standard is for that country. Okay, all of these cases are the get is pasul. Hayab Mizrach, the Kasab Marav. If the sofer was in the east and he wrote the location in the west, or in the west and he wrote it in the east. Okay, so what's the problem with putting in the wrong place is that it's got a date on it, and the and somebody might look at this and say, what, on this date, the witnesses were with me in such and such a place. There's no way they could have been in that place. This must be a fraudulent get. So that's why another reason why it has to be written accurately. Okay, so what's the situation over here? The woman got this divorce, which was not written according to Takanas Chachamim, and she went and got remarried. So now she is married in sin because Chazal didn't, even though maybe midoraisa this was a valid get, but Chazal did not allow this, and therefore she is going to have all these penalties applied to her for having basically cheated on her husband effectively. Tetzei mizeh u'mizeh. Now she needs to get a new divorce from both husbands. Okay. Utsricha get mizeh or mizeh, but each of them needs to give her a get. But ain la look, and she may not ever return to them because once she's effectively committed adultery, she's prohibited both to the husband and to the adulterer. Ain la lo kasuba, she loses the kasuba. These, by the way, are all the penalties that happen to a woman. We saw this in Yevamos when a woman remarries based on the testimony that her husband is dead, and it turns out he's alive. All of these penalties are the same as we learned in Yevamos. So she loses her kasuba. She doesn't have payros. So any payros that she tries to claim back from her husband while he was using the field is not hers. Lo mazonos, she has no entitlement anymore to food. Lo belaos, if her husband took her property and worked it and lessened its value, then she has no claim on him. Lo al zeh v'lo al zeh, this applies to both of these husbands. The imnat la mizeh u mizeh, and if she seized property from either of them as security for whatever she thought that they owed her, tachzir, she must return it. Vlad mamzer mizeh u mizeh. So if she has a child now from either husband, the child is effectively going to be a mamzer. And now in the case in Yevamos, we disagreed actually because we said this in the Mishnah, but we said that actually the majority opinion is that if she returned to her first husband and had a child from him after this whole incident happened, the child from that is not a mamzer because the second marriage had no validity at all. She was not married to she wasn't married to him, and there's no and therefore there's no issue. It was just that the Tana in Yevamos held that because it's prohibited for her to return to the first husband, therefore the child will be a mamzer. But in this particular case, midoraisa, it actually is a mamzer because midoraisa on the midoraisa level, her first get was valid, even though it had the wrong dates on it, and therefore the second marriage was valid, and therefore when she comes back to her first husband, this is now a mamzer. Okay, so we don't. So okay. The child from the second man, however, would be a mamzer derabanan because according to Chazal the first get wasn't valid, even though midoraisa it was. Lo zeh v'zeh mitam inla. So if they're kohanim, then well, the second guy couldn't really be a kohen because because he would have been married to her Isser because he thought she was a divorcee, so that wouldn't have worked. But at any rate, even he also obviously would not be allowed to be matame to her if he did marry her because it would have been illicit. But even the first husband may not be matame to bury her if she died before he could divorce her. And the husbands also do not have any rights to her. So if she now finds a Matzia, she doesn't have to hand it over to them. And whatever she creates is hers. And if she makes any nadarim, neither of them can cancel it. Haisa Bas Yisrael. Now, Haisa Bas Yisrael. We say Haisa Bas Yisrael because the following going to have a Bas Levi and a Bas Kohen. But this applies to everyone, is that she's nifseles min hakahuna. She's now no longer allowed to marry a kohen because she's had relationships with a man that she's not allowed to marry. Okay, so she's pastel from kahuna. If she's a bas levi, then she's not allowed to eat maaser. This is according to the one who says that only a levi is allowed to eat maaser. But we hold that maaser rishon we're talking about. But we hold that anyone is allowed to eat maaser rishon, so this would not apply to her. But Bas Kohen min hatruma. If she's the daughter of a Kohen who is now divorced without children, so even though she returns to her father's house, she's not allowed to eat the truma there because she is now considered a zona, and therefore she is not allowed to eat truma. Now remember we had in Kesubas the shtar chatzizach, the shtar not the shtar chatzizach, the shtar banin dichrin, that if she's one of multiple wives, and let's say the wife's father put an extra amount into the kasuba, that would go to the husband, then if the wife predeceases the husband, then and he inherits the kasuba, then the extra money must go to her yorshim. In other words, to her children, not to the children of his other wives. Okay, so they get a special preference. But in this case, you might have thought that since the husband keeps the kasuba, then he's going to have to pass it on to her children. And the answer is no. Since she voided her own kasuba, everything goes into the general part of Yerusha for all of the children. The Imesu. What happens if either of these husbands die before they can give her a get, and they don't have any children? Achiv shel zeh v'achiv shel zeh choltzin v'lo miyabmin. Then they must do chalitza. They may not do yibum with her. And now returning back to the get, where we said that changing the date or the place messes it up. Also, Shina Shema Ushma, Shem Ira v'Shem Ira. If they messed up the name or they messed up the city in the get, all the same things are going to apply. And see above for all the penalties. Basically, it's the same thing. Get is invalid, and therefore we have to. She has all these penalties. Okay, back to um,
Sota.
yeah,
No, no.
but still on Gittin. Hey, Dalid.
Orphans who relied upon a householder or for them or appointed. I'm sorry. Any orphans who relied on a householder or if their father appointed an administrator for them, he is obligated to their tithe their produce. An administrator appointed by the orphan's father must swear. If appointed by the court, he must need not swear. Abishul says the reverse is true. One who ritually contaminates another's food, or one who mixes with truma, or one who offers his brother's wife as a libation for idol worship. If he did it inadvertently, he is not liable. If deliberately, he is liable. Kohanim who deliberately rendered an offering in the sanctuary, pickle, are liable. Rabbi Yochanan ben Good testified that a deaf-mute girl whose father married her off can be divorced with a get, and that a minor, the daughter of the Canaan Kohen who was married to a Kohen, may eat truma. And if she dies, her husband inherits her, and that for a stolen beam which was built into a large building, he shall take its value for the sake of penitence, and that a stolen sin offering, and that a stolen sin offering whose status was not known to the public atones for the sake of the altar. There were no extortionists of land in Judah in the time of those who were slain at war. From the time of the slain at war and onward, there are extortionists there. How? If one bought from the extortionist and then bought from the owner, his purchase is void. From the owner and then from the extortionist, his purchase is valid. If he bought from the husband and then bought from the wife, his purchase is void. From the wife and then from the husband, his purchase is valid. And this is the original ruling. The court came after them and said, one who buys from an extortionist gives the owner 1/4. When is this? When they do not have with what to buy. But if they have with what to buy, they take precedence over any person. Rebbe convened the court, and they avoided enacted that it remained with the extortionist 12 months. Whoever is the first to buy it acquires it, but he gives the owner 1/4. Okay.
Okay. Now, Sota.
We have base space. Rabbi, he brought a new earthenware cup and put it in a half a log of water from the kior into it. Rabbi Yehuda says a quarter of a log that just as minimizes the amount of writing required, so too he minimizes the amount of water required. He entered the sanctuary and returned to his right, where there was a spot 1 cubit by 1 cubit with a marble flagstone with a ring affixed in it, and he raised it and he took dust from the beneath it. He added enough to be visible on the water, as it is stated, and the Kohen shall take from the dust that will be on the tabernacle floor and add it to the water. When it comes to write the scroll, from what point does he write? From if no man has slain, but if you have stayed with while under the authority of your husband. But he omits and he omits the Kohen shall do it, the woman. He then writes, may Hashem make you for a curse and an oath. The curse causing water shall enter your innards to make your belly bloat and the fly fall away. And he omits, and the woman shall answer, Amen, Amen. Rabbi says he made no break. Rabbi Yehuda said he writes only, may Hashem make you for a curse and not an oath. These curse causing waters shall enter your innards, but he admits, and the woman shall answer, Amen, Amen. He cannot write it on a tablet or on a papyrus or on an unprocessed skin, but only on a scroll. As it is stated in the book, he may not write with gum or vitriol or with any substance that leaves a mark, and only with ink, as it is stated, that he shall dissolve, and if that a writing that can be dissolved.
Yeah. Subas.
Okay, we have Aleph Bet. The tzuba of a virgin is 200 zuz, and that of a widow is 100. A virgin who is a widow, divorced, or had performed kalisah after ever sin, in all these cases, their tzuba is 200, and a claim concerning their virginity can be lodged against them. A proselyte, a captive, and a cave who was ransomed, converted, or emancipated under the age of 3 years and 1 day, their tzuba is 200 zuz, and a claim concerning their virginity can be lodged against them. If an adult male was intimate with an infant girl, or an immature boy was intimate with a mature female, if a woman was injured by a piece of wood, the ketubah is 200 zuz. These are the words of Rav Meir, and the sages, however, say that a ketubah of one injured by a piece of wood is 100. A virgin who is a widow, divorcee, has performed kalitza after marriage. In all these cases, the ketubah is 100 zuz, and no claim concerning their virginity can be lodged against them. a proselyte, a captive, or a slave who were ransomed, converted, and emancipated over the age of 3 years and a day, their consumer is 100, and no claim concerning their virginity can be lodged against them. Okay. And we have Shabbos. Yud Zion base. A person may take a hammer with which to crack nuts, or a hatchet with which to cut up cake or press foods, and a saw with which to chase fleas, a shovel with which to scoop up dried figs, a winnowing shovel or a pitchfork on which to put something for a child, a spindle or a weaver's reed on which to spin fruit. Um, a hand needle with which to take out a thorn, or a sack needle with which to open a door. A cane for olives, if there is a knot at its end, it is susceptible to tumor contamination, and if not, it is not susceptible to tumor contamination. In either case, it may be taken on Shabbos. Rabbi Yossi says all utensils may be taken for a large sore and a coulter. All utensils may be taken either out of necessity or not out of necessity. The Chacham says they may not be taken except out of necessity. Taros.
Taurus, yeah.
Okay, Zion. If one place is closed and is stuck, behold, the bathhouse attendants. Reb Elazar ben Azariah said, "Ruza de Otaha." But the sages say, until he gives him the key or a seal, and until he makes a sign. If one leaves his utensils from his wine pressing season to the coming wine pressing season, his season is like tahor, and Israelite until he says, I had in mind to guard them. If someone was tahor and diverted his attention from eating, Reb Yehuda rules him tahor, since it's the way of Tamei people to separate from him, but the Tamei rule him Tamei. As his hands were tahor and he diverted his attention from eating, even though he said, I know that my hands have not become contaminated, his hands are tamei because a person's hands are active. If a woman entered her house in order to bring bread to a poor man, and she went out and brought them standing next to a lot loaves of truma, and similarly, if a woman went outside and found her friend stirring coals under a pot of truma, Rebbe Akiva says rules tamei, but the surgeons rule them tahor. Rebbe Eliezer ben Peter says, what does Rebbe Akiva rule the tamei, but the surgeons rule the tahor? Because women are gluttonous, and she's suspected of uncovering the pot of a friend in order to know what she is cooking. And Menachos. Okay. We have Ted Zion. No communal offerings require leaning except the bowl, which comes for any other commandments, and the he-goat is designated to send to Azil. As Shimon says, even the he-goats for idolatry. All offerings for individuals require leaning except for the Bakor offering, the Misa offering, and the basic offering. A heir performs leaning and brings libations and makes too much exchange. All must perform leaning except for a deaf, mute, an imbecile, a minor, or a blind man, a non-Jew, and a slave, and an agent. And the woman leaning is considered a woman. Leaning is considered a remainder of the precept. If it is done on the head with two hands in the place where he is leaning is performed, the animals are slaughtered, and the slaughtering immediately precedes the leaning precedes the slaughtering. There's the synergy to the right of leaning over the right of waving, and synergy to the right of waving over the right of leaning. One may perform leaning on behalf of all the fellow owners, but one may not lean on behalf of all the fellow owners. The synergy of waving applies both to individual and communal offerings, while living and when slaughtered, and while living matter and non-living matter, which is not the case with leaning. Yishmael says the Omer is brought on the Sabbath.
That's it. We're done.
I thought, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, terrific.
All right.
Okay, have a great day.
You too.
Enjoy.
Cheers.